What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Face Off Sports Network. I'm your host, Anthony Servino. Follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. Follow the show at the FF Face Off and at fffaceoff.com. We can be found at all the top social media and podcast platforms. Back with me on a Football Tuesday, Pete Nova at Supernova 38. We have a lot to do. First week of the regular season, first live show of the regular season. We're going to be covering top waiver wire ads plus a look ahead into week one. Pete, how you feeling with football literally like less than 48 hours away?
I feel good. It's man, it felt like it took us forever to get here, to be honest. While everyone was kind of enjoying their off season, we've been grinding all off season. So I'm ready for it though. We got you guys covered. So I'm excited.
So yesterday we put out a couple of waiver wire videos. Pete handled top defensive special team streamers that you could start this week. I handled some waiver wire pickups, and you can go check that out in the archives. Today, we're going to be talking more waiver wire ads and answering your questions. So if you have questions, you're in the chat, be sure to ask them. This is your time because during the season, that's our, that's why we're here live to answer all of your fantasy football lineup needs and win some fantasy football championships.
Yeah. Let the questions come in. If you guys have anything, more than happy to answer. Today we're going to talk some waiver wire pickups, and then we'll do some Q&A as well as we kind of get the show rolling.
Now, Pete, I'm trying to get the show into our Facebook group. My Facebook, the webpage was coming out all broken, but I'm finally on there now. So if you want to take a minute and talk here,
yeah.
out there.
Yeah. Hoff said he said hurry up and vape, damn it. And Greg says he picked up the Saints in 3 home leagues. Thanks, Pete. Yeah, no problem, Greg. Yeah. I mean, I put out a video, like Anthony said, just to give you a little tease. I did a defensive waiver pickups. The Saints were one of my defenses. Reason being is Bryce Young was sacked 3.8 times per game last year on average. And, I think it's going to be a nice defense to start because new offensive system with Dave Canales. And I think that will take some time to gel. And Bryce Young has been liable to take sacks. This is an in-division game. The Saints are at home, and it's one of the lowest point totals of the week. When I look at two defenses to pick up, I use Vegas to help with the point totals and the team totals as well. And then are they home or away? So I want home teams, and I want teams that are projected low scoring, and that's generally a guide that I use. So that's, appreciate that, Greg. I'm glad you used that and were able to get the Saints defense in 3 leagues. We also have a super chat here from Steven Drakes for $5. Thanks, Steven. I don't know if we've answered any of your questions, but happy to answer this one for you. He said, sup, fellas. Would you trade Raheem Mostert for Devonta Smith? He has CMC Mixon, and I think he said Moore and Ford. I don't know who Moore. I'm trying to think of who he meant by Moore, More. If you want to drop that in, Steven, you can let us know. But I think regardless, I would definitely trade Mostert for Devonta Smith, CMC and Mixon. I mean, you have the anchor back in CMC, and then you have Mixon, who's more than fine to be your RB2, especially when you have a stud in CMC. If Mixon was your RB2 and you didn't have like a great RB1, with him, like maybe like a Kamara, I wouldn't want to trade Mostert. But given that you have an elite upside running back in CMC, I feel like it's a great move. I'm excited to see Devonta Smith this year, so I definitely would make that trade.
Yeah, this is a trade I would also make. CMC Mixon, those two should be filling out your running back 1 and 2 spot over Raheem Mostert anyway. And if you had to, Ford in the flex, Ford could also serve in your RB2 spot. People are worried about, Ford's value when Nick Chubb comes back. And I've been saying this for a while now. Jerome Ford is going to probably be in that Kareem Hunt role. He's a very good pass catcher, no more Kareem Hunt. And that is a true role in this offense, as we've seen through the years, where Nick Chubb is handling a lot of those early down carries, and then they'll spell him for Kareem Hunt. I think we can slide, or assume that they're going to slide, Jerome Ford in that role. So not only is he a handcuff for Nick Chubb, but he's going to have standalone value in the flex spot all season long as he's healthy. So, yeah, you absolutely make that trade, getting Devonta Smith. And when it comes to valuation, like where you probably drafted these guys, Devonta Smith, third, fourth round pick, Raheem Mostert going multiple rounds later. So you absolutely win that trade.
And he also came in and said he meant to say Kyron. So, yeah, I mean,
wow.
an absolutely smash spot. I'm definitely making that trade. And Steven, we appreciate the super chat as well. That's essentially, there's a lot of questions that are in the chat right now. The reason Stevens was pulled is because, we are trying to make it a priority to answer anybody that does send in a couple bucks. It helps us out. It's a long season, and there's going to be a lot of questions. We have a ton in the chat right now. Let's go to the next question while I get us up on Facebook too. It is from a Facebook friend. It is Jared Fortin, who Jared has came in and been a part of our shows off Facebook recently. So we appreciate you coming in. Anthony, if you want to answer this one while I get Facebook up with the show, it says, thoughts on my 12-team PPR. Had pick 11. He has Mahomes and Lawrence as his two quarterbacks. Running back would be Kyron and A-Chain. I'm assuming he also took Justin Jefferson, so I'm assuming he went Jefferson, Kyron, A-Chain with his first three picks. He has Jordan Mason and Chase Brown and Singletary, so that rounds out his running back room. And then it's Jefferson, T. Higgins, Christian Watson, Josh Palmer, Jerry Jeudy, Kincaid, Otten, and then he's got the Cincy defense and Myers, I think, from Seattle as the kicker. If you had to give him a rating, anywhere you feel like he can improve, what do you rate the team?
I mean, this team is, I would probably give it an A. It's a 12-team league, and you're walking away with guys like Mahomes, Kyron, Achan, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown. Now, if Jared, this also might be a dynasty league. I remember Jared dealing with him from Facebook last year. If this is a dynasty league, I think you absolutely, I don't see how you lose with this line. If I'm remembering correctly, you've always had that heavy wide receiver team. This is certainly an A, and as long as your guys can stay healthy and Chase shows up, you have a really good chance of winning the championship. I don't see a single hole on that roster.
Awesome. All right, so why don't we go to our? I'm still getting our show up on Facebook, but I'm going to go to the first player. It is going to be Jaleel McLaughlin for the waiver wire pickups, 33% rostered, and Anthony has targeted him as his highest priority waiver ad. Like I said, 33% rostered. Anthony, why don't you kind of explain a little bit as to why he is somebody that you're looking to target?
Yeah, Jaleel is one of my favorite players to pick up going into week one. And, people might question, well, why do you have waivers going into week one? What's the point? The point is there are always guys who go undrafted that could potentially win you a league. Obviously, last year, Kyron and Puka Nacua, those are the two big ones. And there are not going to be guys like that every year, but there are going to be guys like Jaleel McLaughlin that you want to get ahead of the market on. McLaughlin last year was super efficient anytime he touched the ball. We know historically Sean Payton likes to target the running backs. In fact, Denver, I believe, led all NFL teams in running back targets, and their most targeted running back, to my memory, was Samaje Perine, is no longer there. He's in Kansas City. Perine, I believe, 50 catches last year. They're all going to go somewhere, and Jaleel McLaughlin, I like to see this backfield almost like a poor man Kamara and Mark Ingram when you look at Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams. I'm not saying McLaughlin's going to give us Alvin Kamara production, but I do think for somebody that went undrafted in your league and you could pick up week one going into the regular season, he's going to smash his ADP value or his waiver wire value right now. I think it's a no-brainer pickup. Especially with Bo Nix, rookie quarterback, this is not a very good offensive line. There will be a lot of check down opportunities. And let's say they pull the plug on Nix. It doesn't go well. He gets hurt. And eventually they have to go to Zach Wilson. Look what Zach Wilson and all his check downs did for a guy like Breece Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and being that I am the resident Broncos fan here, I feel like I have a good vibe or a good idea as to what I think the Broncos want to do. And you know, I've been adamant that I think Javonte is the guy to own on this team, but I do think Jaleel can provide some upside for sure. The targets will be there. I worry about how much volume he gets. I think he's limited to maybe 15 touches max in a game. But even if Javonte gets hurt, I think Aldrick Estime is probably the guy that slots in, and Jaleel's maybe gets a few more touches here and there. But I still like Jaleel. I think he provides pop, and I think he, especially for some bye weeks this year. And quite honestly, this offense, if it's moving downfield more this year than it did last year, it'll provide more opportunities for him to get on the field, even on third down. Now, Javonte is the better pass blocker, but they will manufacture touches. And this is an offense that's lacking firepower. And so that's one benefit, is they will manufacture touches for Jaleel. It's just a matter of how many per game. And so how consistently can you start him? But he's absolutely a guy that he really in a 12 team league, he really shouldn't be on waivers, but it is a little shocking that, he's only 33% rostered. He's absolutely somebody that I would target and pick up in a 12-man league for sure.
Yeah, we are using roster percentages from Fantasy Pros, and what I think that they do is they take the consensus of multiple fantasy platforms to come up with their numbers. So this isn't our leagues, like this is the Fantasy Pros consensus number.
Yeah. Cool. So we have a couple more questions in here. I'll pull some from the chat. ATL Michael says 49ers beat reporter says his sources this year is it's boomer bust for the 49ers ownership. I actually did see this. One of the beat writers said that the ownership's not happy and they really think it's boomer bust. Do you think it is boomer bust for Lynch and Kyle? I'm gonna say no. I don't think unless it's an absolute disaster, I don't think they let I don't think that the ownership would allow them to hand out these contracts if they didn't feel like they would be giving him the runway to continue with this core, in my opinion. And for what it's worth, like many teams in the NFL would absolutely jump on, the chance to bring Lynch and Kyle Shanahan in as their head coach and owner duo if both were to get canned. So I don't think there's much steam to it unless it's just an absolute train wreck this year.
Yeah, and Hoff, he's going to call me a 49ers hater. I do think this is a pivotal year for this football team. How many times can you make the Super Bowl? How many times can you knock on the door? You're giving out all of these contracts. I mean, a lot of top-heavy deals. Nick Bosa, $170 million. Trent Williams, 138.1. Ayuk 120. Like this is a very top-heavy team, and the issue with being a top-heavy team, there's a lot of them. I mean, look at what Dallas is going to be when they get all their guys signed. Your depth is kind of going to be a little bit shoddy. You better draft right. You better hit. But if things do go sideways this year, I'm not saying that they're going to fire Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch, but do I think the rope gets a little bit shorter? What happens, and this is going to be big. I think this is a legitimate question. What happens if there is a Super Bowl hangover? What if Brock Purdy, this isn't an easy matchup on Monday Night Football against the New York Jets. This is a legitimate defense. Trent Williams is showing up a few days before the game. What if that leaves Brock Purdy exposed? What if he gets banged up? I mean, there's a lot of bad that can happen right out of the gate. It happened to the Jets last year. And, what happens if the 49ers, that they suffer some key injuries, and then you go into next offseason, well, should we pay Brock Purdy? And I do think these are real questions. And again, Hawk doesn't want to hear it. But that there is a world to where, hey, do we need to make a quarterback change? Let's say they knock on the door again. They get to another NFC championship and they don't make it this time. how much do you really want to pay these guys? And I feel like that's what's going on with Dak in Dallas right now, where Jerry's like, no, I really don't want to pay you. And I think
Yeah.
that's legit. I don't know if Jerry wants to pay Dak.
Yeah.
How many times in NFL history can we name, you got Dak and Mike McCarthy. They're both free agents essentially going into the season. That doesn't happen. And they've won together back to back to back 12-win seasons. Eventually, you got to do more.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, I don't think it would be both of them because I don't think they came in same time, owner as a GM and coach. So I would put money on it that it's probably Shanahan and not Lynch. Here's why. The 49ers every year get compensation picks. Every year they are constantly reloading. Lynch, for what it's worth, like people hate on him for his draft history, and he hasn't, he's had some mistakes, but every year they somehow get these third round comp picks. Every year they're getting more and more and more. And then Lynch is giving out these contracts. I would think it's probably more a coaching thing. The roster's there. Why would Lynch get fired? I mean, the roster is there. And it's not. Shanahan's a great coach. My point is though, look how talented they are.
No,
it's never an issue about talent.
I don't think it's a Lynch, and I don't think it's a Lynch Shanahan problem. When it's all said and done, again, and people don't want to hear this. How do you have to go pay a legitimate quarterback?
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to me.
Yeah,
not saying Brock Purdy isn't, but if he doesn't eventually get over that hump, do you want to pay him with the upper echelon quarterbacks?
Or he's going to get paid, but he's going to get paid next year. I mean, barring injury, if Purdy doesn't get paid next year, it means Shanahan is gone and they had a terrible year. Because other than that, I mean, their hands are tied. Unless he gets hurt, like you said, and maybe they have a top pick next year and they go and draft somebody, that would be another scenario. But all right, well,
I would say this goes to ATL. This goes to Miami too with Mike McDaniel. They were talking about it on Good Morning Football. The third-year head coach, if you're legitimate, you need to go have success. It's not just about making the playoffs. You need to go and win a game. Yeah. And I think it's also for the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel. We've seen this team put up prolific offensive points and yards only to die off in December and not show up to playoff games.
Yeah.
And I don't think ownership wants to hear, I had to go to Kansas City and it's cold.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. Let's move on. But I think it's a good topic. And honestly, if we didn't have a lot of questions in here, I would continue to talk about it. But if Hoff was here, we probably would be on it for another 20 minutes. But all right, this is a quick one. Upper 90 says, do you think Njoku's hot end to the season last year will continue this year with a different quarterback? I do not. I do not. I don't really know what to make of Njoku. That's why when we've talked, Jake Ferguson is the cutoff for me at tight ends. I'd rather take a chance on Brock Bowers, who's a little bit cheaper generally in most drafts than Njoku, and just take that chance on Bowers. It's not that I don't like Njoku. It just took so long to unlock him. And now we have Deshaun Watson, who typically doesn't have a history of targeting the tight end very often. I just worry that, we might have seen the best of Njoku last season in that stretch with this quarterback.
Yeah, I like David Njoku, the player. I don't necessarily like David Njoku with Deshaun Watson. I am hard fading David Njoku. I don't have much exposure to him. Just like what Pete's saying, Mike cutoff, I want one of those top 9 tight ends, and that line is drawn at Ferguson. And then there's a little bit of a gap to where I'm bypassing Njoku, I'm bypassing Bowers. I kind of like Goddard. Goddard's always been an efficient tight end. He's never needed a lot of targets to produce in fantasy. I would grab Goddard. Guys like Hunter Henry, guys like Mike Gesicki in the back end. But no, David Njoku's too expensive, usually going as a 10th or 11th tight end off the board, to have so much uncertainty tied to him, and this is also a Browns team. They went out and got Jerry Jeudy. They paid Jerry Jeudy. They
They did.
believe that there is something here with Jerry Jeudy. And if Jerry Jeudy pops, I think the one who suffers target-wise is going to be David Njoku.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm kind of on the same wavelength there. Guys, we have a lot of questions. Some of them are start sits. We are doing a start sit show tomorrow. Me and Anthony are going to do a couple clips, and then we'll probably talk start sits on Thursday or Friday on that live show. We want to get to everybody, but again, like we still have some stuff we have to get to, but we'll try our best to get to every question. Similar to what Steven did here. Like if you feel like something's a priority and you need it answered, and maybe you got to leave and you can't stay around to watch until we get to your question, feel free to send us a super chat. We'll make sure we pull it up immediately and answer it for you. But again, if you're in the chat, you can see we just have a lot of questions to get to. Let's move on to our next player here real quick. It's going to be J.K. Dobbins, 45% rostered currently as it stands per Fantasy Pros across the formats that they pull from. Dobbins is an interesting one this year. He really wasn't that expensive. I am a little surprised that he is available in some leagues. But let's look at J.K. Dobbins for a second. And on this show, we want to look at guys that are under 50%. So we're never going to give you a player that's over 50% ownership. And we're going to give you at the end a couple really, really low owned players for those that are in deeper leagues to target. But for J.K. Dobbins, this is a situation where it's probably going to be a rotation with him and Gus Edwards. I think Dobbins is going to see a lot of the work between the 20s, and then Gus Edwards is going to see a lot of the work at the goal line. And then you have rookie Kamani Vidal, but we don't know how early they're going to provide him a chance to get involved. It could take second half of the year for Vidal. And so Dobbins, if he's available, he shouldn't be available. And in a league where there's fantasy, it's just tough with running backs, and it's hard to get depth. And if J.K. Dobbins is out there, he's absolutely worth picking up and rostering. And I would even consider taking him over, like, if you have like a rookie wide receiver that you drafted late, like a Jalen McLaughlin, who I like. It may take a little more time for guys like that to get involved. So take a shot on Dobbins early, and then they'll tell us what the workload will be. We might look at it. It might be the Gus Edwards and Vidal show and Jared Patterson, and then we know, okay, we can drop, J.K. Dobbins, but he's absolutely worth at least rostering for the first few weeks to just see how the rotation shakes out.
Yeah, I think J.K. Dobbins, if he's healthy, he's going to be the number one running back here, with Gus Edwards kind of serving as a short yardage goal line back. But Dobbins, he's the most dynamic running back on this roster. And, let's take a look back in his rookie year into 2022 and 2023. Obviously, he did not play in 2021. But from a fantasy points per game perspective, 11.2 in 2022, 10.2 fantasy points per game in 8 games in 2022, and then 11.7 fantasy points per game in the 1 game he played last year. When it comes to efficiency, J.K. Dobbins, 5.8 yards per carry, is first amongst all active running backs with 200 career carries. Back in his rookie year, he averaged 6 yards a carry with 9 touchdowns on 134 carries for 805 yards, and then 5.7 yards per carry on 92 attempts in 2022. So he's a super efficient running back. He's dynamic. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy and on the football field?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the talent's there. We know it. Look at Cam Akers, right? I mean, not to say Cam Akers has done anything yet, but it is weird. Like, we're in a new age with medicine and sports medicine that, like, guys, these injuries that we thought were career enders, like, for whatever reason, like, guys are getting better therapy. I'm not a doctor, but it just seems like these injuries that seem to be detrimental. Like, look at Adrian Peterson. Now, obviously that was a while ago, but I mean, had one of, if not the best seasons from a running back ever after that ACL injury. So, obviously this is Achilles, but he's torn it multiple times and he's been able to stick on that roster. And then look at what Cam Akers did, who's tore his multiple times, and he's probably the RB2 in Houston. So I definitely like that call for sure. I'm pulling a couple of questions here. Greg, we appreciate you coming in. Greg said, thoughts on Jamar Chase week 1? He hasn't been at practice, but I'm guessing you have to start him. You got to start him. I mean, I think T. Higgins is a really nice play this week, even if Jamar Chase comes and is playing, because here's the thing. In practice, they're going to have to create a game plan. And if Jamar Chase is not practicing for half of this week, T. Higgins is the game plan. Now, obviously, Jamar Chase has familiarity with the offense, but T. Higgins is going to be the guy that they feature in practice to get ready for the game. And on top of it, they might not want to put a heavy workload on Jamar because he hasn't practiced in over a week. So you got to start him either way, but I wouldn't think twice about starting him, but you could end up being frustrated.
Yeah, I feel opposite, and Cincinnati, they do not have to release a practice or an injury report ahead of Wednesday. So we'll know a little bit more tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if Jamar Chase isn't practicing, I would say like tomorrow, I don't know if I can start him in my fantasy lineups. I don't even know if the Cincinnati Bengals would have him active if he's not practicing at least 2 days this week. The heightened risk of a lower body injury. Do you really want to do that to your number one wide receiver? And this is a game that Cincinnati has. Who's their week 1 opponent?
Since he's playing the Patriots.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, do you need to put Jamar Chase at risk to beat the New England Patriots? You shouldn't have to. So I don't know that barring a return to practice tomorrow that we are even going to see Jamar Chase on the field.
Yeah. I get it. Higgins is definitely a must start this week. No matter what happens, if he comes back or not, I think that's how I feel. Do you feel the same or?
Oh yeah, you're starting Higgins regardless this week. Absolutely. Yeah. But I just don't know, you got the contract situation. It's a winnable game in week 1. If I'm Cincinnati from a football perspective, I think you have to sit Jamar Chase.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you at all. All right, we have Ray Gamer here. He said start 2 in a standard 6 point per touchdown. He said he's got Waddle versus the Jags, Brandon Ayuk versus the Jets, Rashee Rice versus the Ravens, and he also could start Keon Coleman or Joshua Palmer, but he plans to sit both of them. Yeah, I mean, Brandon Ayuk versus the Jets could be tough. I think I lean Waddle and I lean Rashee Rice. I think that Jaguars game is going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be very high scoring. And Rashee Rice, I think they're going to feature him. A lot of hype with Xavier Worthy. I think Xavier Worthy is probably going to have one big shot in that game, or maybe they have like a 45-yard catch for him. But Andy Reid tends to ease his rookies into the game plan, especially wide receivers. He did that in Philly. We saw it with Rashee Rice last year, where as the year progressed, he got more involved. Rashee Rice is going to be featured tomorrow heavily, in my opinion. And it would definitely be Rice and Waddle for me, and I would sit Ayuk versus the Jets. I don't know how you feel about that, Anthony.
So, yeah, Rashee Rice, let's start with Rice first. He's an absolute must start. If we go back to the postseason, and I'm pulling it up now, I believe Rashee Rice had a really nice game against the Baltimore Ravens. Actually, he wasn't. Targeted 9 times, 8 receptions for 46 yards, only 12.6 PPR points. But again, 9 targets, 8 receptions. So that at least brings you a floor. He's a touchdown away from giving you around 20 points in that format. And that was against Baltimore. I believe that was Kelsey had a really nice game, as he historically does against the Ravens. But yeah, I'm certainly going Rice. And then Jalen Waddle. The handicap to that Jaguar secondary, and I do think that's going to be another issue this year, is the secondary. I don't exactly trust it. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this football game. And there's not a lot of history. I believe Waddle only played the Jaguars one time, which was back in 2021, Waddle's rookie year. But he did go off for 29 PPR points, 10 of 13 targets for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like
Yeah,
that
and
doesn't really matter now. But
yeah.
again, like that's the only I like looking at head-to-head history or player against team history. So we did have that one pop game a few years ago. A lot has changed, but I would bet a healthy Jalen Waddle against a Jaguar secondary that I do not trust whatsoever.
Yeah, so fantasy points, which is a really awesome suite that we pay for, and those guys do a good job there. They put out their wide receiver cornerback matchup report, and I'm looking at it now. And Jalen Waddle has the 4th best advantage. He's going up against Tyson Campbell. Now, this is assuming that they shadow the whole time. We don't know if that'll happen, but assuming Tyson Campbell, who's the second corner on the team, is covering him, they have Waddle as the 4th best advantage of any wide receiver this week. So that's something good. And then Rashee Rice, for what it's worth, is probably going to be covered by Darius Washington, is what they're guessing, because he plays, I think, in the slot cornerback. And Rice is the 7th best advantage this week as well. So for what it's worth, they like it, and they do a pretty good job there. And it's just pretty much provides the defender information, the receiver. So those look like they're 2 really good matchups and good plays. Do you have anything else, or you want to move on to the next player?
Jacksonville allowed the 5th most receiving fantasy points last year, and they didn't really do a lot, to improve this secondary. I think maybe outside of like Darnell Savage, really good safety. But as far as the cornerbacks, like I don't love what they're putting on the football field. Ronald Darby, Tyson Campbell, and then nickel. It actually does look like Savage. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back in here with one more question, just because Steven came back in here and he did give us a super chat before, so I want to answer him. He said, would you start Ford over Kupp this week in a half-point PPR? Kupp is going up against the Detroit secondary. I mean, Jerome Ford, probably not. I'm probably going to roll the dice with Cooper Kupp. I'm trying to look at the matchups here. Says Cooper Kupp has a pretty good advantage as well in his matchup with the corner he's against. But I don't really need that to tell me to start Cooper Kupp, to be fair. That's against the Lions, and their secondary did get better, but it's Cooper Kupp. And Jerome Ford has a pretty hard matchup against Dallas this week. And so I definitely would go with Kupp, and I probably wouldn't think twice about it.
Yeah, I'm also in on Cooper Kupp, and Ford's going to have a high floor. There's probably a world where he scores a touchdown. Like I would look at his anytime touchdown scorer odds in this matchup. But Cooper Kupp, all the expectations and the beat writer reports suggesting that the offense is going to once again run through Cooper Kupp. I don't exactly trust the health of Puka Nacua going into week 1. And Kupp, even last year, not a great matchup. Was also, I believe, a postseason matchup between these two teams. And we know Kupp wasn't that healthy last year, but he did have 9 targets. So if we get a healthier version of Cooper Kupp in week 1, and he's getting anywhere in that target range, 9+ targets, I do think we're going to have a better outing than 5 for 27.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And again, Ford, it's just a tough matchup. Dallas's defense, they did lose their DC, but I still think it's going to be a tough matchup. And Deshaun Watson, we don't know how I don't know how that offense is going to get off, especially against a tough defense in week 1 with Watson coming back. So I'm a little worried there. But let's move on to our next player. We still have some more questions. We'll get to you guys. Just hang tight. Next player is going to be Ray Davis, 17% rostered across formats. And this is a guy that we, as a collective, have really liked. Inside the 5-yard line last season, Latavius Murray had more carries than James Cook. James Cook had 4 carries inside the 5-yard line last year. Latavius Murray had 12. Latavius scored 4 times, and James Cook scored once. Now, to me, it's significant. Obviously, you have Josh Allen, and we know he's probably the primary guy inside the 5 to score a touchdown on the ground. But this is a team that has been screaming and telling us for the last few seasons that they want a bigger body back. Zach Moss didn't work out, but like his architect and his type is a banger. At least that's what they drafted him to be, and he just didn't work out. Right? They brought in Devin Singletary. He was okay for fantasy. Reminds me a lot of James Cook Singletary in a way of like, solid pass catcher, but doesn't do anything extremely well. And that's kind of how I feel with Cook. Cook was like in the 40s or 50s last year, and I don't have this exact statistic in front of me, but 40s or 50s last year for stacked boxes against him. So while people will point at, oh, he was like 4th or 5th in the league for rushing yards, this is also considering the fact that like this was against like very light boxes, extremely light boxes. And I don't know, Sean McDermott's a very old school guy, and he's not going to put up with mistakes. And James Cook, we've seen it. Guy fumbles, drops a catch, he's out for the series, comes back the next series. Like that kind of stuff's going to happen. And Ray Davis, Dane Bueller or
Bugler.
Bugler. I was trying to pronounce it right. From The Athletic, is one of my favorite guys when it comes to evaluating rookies, and he was extremely high on Ray Davis this year. And for all intents and purposes, reports out of camp says Davis has looked awesome in the pass game, at pass protection and on the ground. Like he's doing everything the right way. And so I think Ray Davis is a really nice play, and he could carve out a role very early this year, especially if you're in like a standard league that like you're just looking for a guy like in a 14-man that you just need somebody to get into the end zone. Like he could be a guy if you're in deeper leagues that like you're like, hey, my running backs suck. Like I just need somebody to score me a touchdown because the rest of my roster is good. Ray Davis could definitely be that guy for you. And I like adding him in my fantasy leagues. I think I have him in like 70% of redraft leagues.
Yeah, I'm here with you on Ray Davis, one of my most rostered players, no matter format this offseason. I think there's a clear path and rebuttal. Well, James Cook, he's efficient. He racks up a lot of yards. That's really all he does. And he also puts the football on the ground. There's some ball security issues there. But a couple of glaring stats. Davis, 20 touchdowns in 12 games at the collegiate level last season. When it comes to his projected role in Buffalo, it's going to be the goal line back. James Cook last year was given 2 carries inside the 5 post week 4 last season, while the Buffalo Bills gave Latavius Murray, who was 33 years old, the 12th most running back carries from inside the 5-yard lines in the NFL. If James Cook is your guy, why are you giving a 33-year-old plotter the 12th most carries inside the 5-yard line in the money zone when you have your guy in James Cook? I don't think they believe in James Cook the way the fantasy football consensus believes in James Cook. They also added guys like Pete said through the years, Damian Harris, Ty Johnson, that kicked the tires on Leonard Fournette. This is a team that's telling us we want a complimentary back. We not only want a back to complement James Cook, but I also think they want a back to take some of the beating and the short yardage opportunities away from Josh Allen, because Josh Allen, the older he gets, I don't think you want him taking all of that abuse in short yardage and third down and short and goal and short situations. So I'm all in on Ray Davis. He's a player you absolutely want to get ahead of the market, because let's say Ray Davis, if he scores a touchdown and gets like 3 goal line carries in week 1, he's going to cost a little bit of your fab money and your high waiver priority to get. So get him now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Totally agree with you on that. A lot of questions here. Let's see what I can pull. I'm just trying to be fair, guys, and just grab what I can while we keep the show going. Luis Roma, who is always in our Facebook chat, we appreciate you, Luis, says thoughts on this player trade. I think he's giving up Spears and Jalen Polk for Josh Palmer, and he's going to pick up P. Ryan off of waivers. I mean, in a vacuum, let's assume he gets Perine. Let's just add Perine to the trade. Perine, Palmer for Spears and Polk. I'm not really huge on Tajay Spears this year. Jalen Polk, I don't know what to make of it. I know Josh Palmer is going to have a role. So I'm okay with it if you have the running back depth to give up Spears. I like Spears over Perine, but I would need to know if your running back depth is okay and Spears is like your fourth or fifth back, then I'm okay. I think Palmer's an upgrade over Polk. But if you don't have a lot of depth, I think Perine is a very solid downgrade from Spears. If that makes sense. Anthony, what about you?
I don't know if Perine's a downgrade. Like in the final week of FFPC drafts that I'm doing, I'm seeing Samaje Perine go as high as the 12th round. He's good. The fact that Andy Reid is going to activate Samaje Perine as soon as Thursday night, that tells me, hey, that Jerick McKinnon role is going to be his right out the gate. A little bit less of a learning curve to be a running back. Now, I don't expect him to take all of that role because he needs to learn pass protection and all that. But I do think Perine eventually emerges as something. So I would grab him off waivers if I can. I just don't know if I'm willing to give up Tajay Spears and Polk to get Palmer. Why didn't you just draft Palmer?
Yeah, I
feel like you're giving up a lot of value to get Josh Palmer. Polk and Palmer are about a round apart.
Yeah, no, and I could definitely see that. I think it depends on the roster construction. I think Palmer is a safer play, and if you need that, Polk might be higher upside, but I don't know how. I just don't really know how that receiver room is going to shake out. I mean, KJ Osborne is there. I know that's sounds like who is that, but Osborne's there. Pop Douglas is there. Tyquan Thornton is getting reps with the starters there. It just might take Polk more time to get involved. And I think Palmer will make a bigger impact early for the first half of the season than Polk. I could be completely wrong about this. And I wouldn't be shocked. I do like Polk, but it's just it's a bad offense. And it's a lot of meh, crowded, guys. And I just worry that I don't know how much Jalen Polk will be. I could be wrong, and Polk could just blow up because he's just that talented, and then they have to get him on the field and have to give him targets. But I don't know how much I want to bank on that if I need somebody to step up. And I think Palmer is going to be a guy that's involved early and often, and you won't have to wait a couple games into the season to see him kind of return on his investment.
Polk is apparently projected to start, but being a starter in the NFL doesn't really mean a lot. Does that mean he's going to start and during, running situations, they put in KJ Osborne because KJ Osborne's an exceptional, blocking wide receiver. So I don't know how much I'm buying into the Jalen Polk listed as a starter because again, like Pete is saying, there's just so much volatility here. So many young guys, so much uncertainty. Could he have the most ceiling of all these Patriots wide receivers? Yes. Is there a world where Drake May comes in and lights it up? Yes. But that's probably not happening until October, mid-season. So Polk, you could probably drop him in all reality and possibly pick him back up, in a few weeks. But I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about trading both guys to get Palmer unless you absolutely need the wide receiver help.
Yeah,
this is just a depth play. If it's a depth play, I'm holding on to Polk and Spears.
I agree. Yeah, depth play, holding on to if you have the depth at running back, I don't think Perine is significant of a drop off enough. Where if you add Perine and you have Palmer, I'm okay with that side. If you need to get better at wide receiver, So. All right, a lot of other questions in here. Let's try to get through some of these a little quickly. Danny Finn's fan says, I play in a championship belt league winner. I play in a championship league where there's a belt given out to the league winner. LOL. But my first 6 picks were St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, James Cook, A-Chain, Rice, and he picked 10th. I'm assuming a 12-man league because if he picked 10th and it was the last pick, you probably would have said I picked last. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty good. I mean, to get St. Brown and Garrett Wilson must have fell to the second round. I think you're in pretty good shape there. And if you have any other questions, Danny, let us know. Another question here from George Play 01 says, Javonte and Brian Robinson or Zay Flowers. Okay, so pick one: Javonte, Brian Robinson, or Zay Flowers for a flex non PPR. If it's non PPR, Denver's going up against. I don't want Zay Flowers if it's non PPR. So I think we can. I probably assume you may agree with me, but in non PPR, I don't want Zay Flowers in this scenario. I probably lean with the running back because there's more volume. But it would be between Brian and Javonte for me. Who do the it's Washington, correct? They play
Yeah, they're getting
Washington, right?
Tampa.
I would go Brian Robinson over. I think I would go Brian Robinson just because I think that defense. I would go Brian Robinson because I think he's going to get a similar workload to Javonte, but Mike McDonald, you know, that Seattle defense could be firing off on all cylinders, and I just it worries me that front for Seattle is pretty strong. Brian Robinson outside of Vita Vea, I'm not too worried about their front over there. Javante's going up against Leonard Williams and the guy actually that came over from Denver, Draymond Jones, some two solid guys in the middle there, and then they have some okay edges. So I think I'd probably lean with Brian Robinson here.
This is tough because Tampa was actually one of the stingiest defenses last year in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs, and Seattle conceded the most, but Seattle also made significant changes to upgrade their front seven. I don't mind Zay Flowers, but the no non-PPR thing scares me because if he does not score, then I don't know where you're getting the value from because this is a team that we know with Mark Andrews in the lineup. He kind of emerges as the top pass catcher for Lamar Jackson. Now, if we go back into that playoff game between KC and Baltimore, Zay Flowers, he had a big pop game, one of his better, more complete games of the year, but he's downgraded from me in PPR. So I would lean one of the running backs, and I think I lean Javonte Williams.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of a discrepancy here between me and Pete. I just think that, hey, maybe this defense in Seattle takes a little bit more time to gel. Plus, I think that we're going to see a more run-heavy approach from Denver to where, they're going to run with Washington, but how much of that's going to be Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, that's fair. I totally can understand that. I mean, I'm pretty split myself. If you asked me this in an hour, I might tell you Javonte after thinking about it more. You're definitely right. Seattle was like a fantasy running backs like hard on. Like everybody wanted to start their running backs against Seattle last year with McDonald. This should be improved, but to your point, they could also start off a little bit slower, being that they have a lot of younger guys on this defense. So definitely a good question. And that's why, look, our start sits are going to be on Thursdays and Fridays. So it's going to give us some more time to answer some questions for you guys. But let's roll in. I know we have a lot more questions here, guys. And again, we want to roll into the next player for the show. If you want to make sure your question's answered, send us $2 as a super chat. If you're on Facebook, send us some stars. We appreciate it, and we'll make sure to answer it before the show is off because, as you can see, we are loaded up on questions in the chat. Next player is going to be Mike Williams, 43% rostered. This is a guy that is coming off of a season-ending injury and is now partnered up with Aaron Rodgers in the New York Jets offense. And for what it's worth, I mean, not a ton of competition. Tyler Conklin's there. We think he can be solid. He's actually, Tyler Conklin's had some pretty solid seasons from a targets perspective and catches over the last 2 years. Breece Hall, obviously we know what he can do in the receiving game. And then you look at Garrett Wilson, right, who's going to be double covered. Mike Williams was off to the best start of his career last year in a points per game perspective. This is a top 10 overall pick in the first round. We know the pedigree's there. We know the talent's there. And then, yes, he tear his ACL? Absolutely. But this is not a guy who made his hay off of being extremely fast and elusive. It was the jump ball. It was the big body, going up for the catch. And so he could present some from some opportunity in fantasy. I don't hear a lot of people talking about him. I certainly think he's somebody to definitely take a chance on, because Garrett Wilson's going to get a lot of attention, and Mike Williams, if he's healthy, he might start off a little bit slower, but I definitely think he'll be there as a red zone threat and somebody that can punch it into the end zone. So I definitely think he's somebody to definitely monitor for sure.
Mike Williams is a player that in the past he's rostered everywhere. Now coming off the injury, his ADP dipped. I'm just looking at Underdog right now. It's probably going to close right into that 130.2 range, which is crazy. He's 29. He is getting older, but one of the craziest things about Mike Williams, that his career started off slow, where in 2021 he had his most fantasy relevant season, and that was his year 5. 15.4 points per game in 16 games. 2022, 13.6 in 13 games. And last year, a career high 16.7, but only lasted 3 games. Now he slides over to the Jets. Very similar in terms of elite quarterback. You got the alpha and Garrett Wilson like he had with Keenan Allen, where Mike Williams is very rarely in New York going to see the top end coverage or the double coverage. I like Corley, but he's going to get eased in. He's also like Deebo Samuel light, so a different type of playmaker on that offense. There could be a lot of deep balls going in Mike Williams' direction. Now, coming off the injury, there's a world where, the Jets might not use him full throttle the first couple of weeks, but this is a player, again, I would go get ahead of the market, stash him now, because it only takes, Mike Williams a couple of opportunities to drop 2 touchdowns and 90 yards on you, and then he's going to be the highest waiver wire ad. That can happen very, very early this season.
Yeah, and giving a guy like Aaron Rodgers a big target like that. Obviously, I'm not comparing Mike Williams to Devontae Adams, but big body guy who can go up and get the ball. Very similar in that regard. So yeah, I definitely like the call out for sure. Louis Roma came back and said his RB4 is Spears. So in that, it would technically P. Ryan would either be his RB4 or his RB5. I don't know if he has anybody behind Spears. I don't know if that changes your mind on that.
I'm not making that move.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, totally fair. I need to know how good his other running backs
I need the receivers.
were.
I need to know who the receivers are.
Yeah.
That to me, that's the deal breaker, because to me, like you're moving off of Spears, who could be in a 60-40 split with Pollard, and we know he has some pop. And then you're down to 3 running backs and Samaje Perine, who may not have a legitimate role in until October.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think my thing would be if he's got if he's got Breece Hall and Kyron Williams as his first 2 running backs, and his receivers are light, I don't hate that if you're moving Spears and he's your third, he's your 4th running back. But we spent a lot of time on that one anyway. Ton of questions still in here. Let's get back to those. Jamie, I believe, had one. So let's go back. And he said, I drafted 2 quarterbacks before the 4th round. Ended good or bad choice. Took Mahomes and AR-15 in the 4th. After that, went Kincaid. And then 3 wide receivers in the next 3 rounds. I think it depends. Personally, I don't really love the strategy, Jamie, if we're being honest. I
don't. One quarterback.
I don't know. He didn't really say. If it's a 1 quarterback, I definitely would advise against it, just because you're paying for a premium player in Mahomes. There's no reason to get another stud quarterback behind him. AR-15, if you want to make that argument, yes. Totally fine with taking a competent guy to back him up because of the injuries, but I'm still not reaching that high. You draft a guy that high, have confidence in that guy. There's no reason to draft his backup that high as well.
Could have drafted Kirk Cousins, 8 rounds later.
Yeah, we're off. Again, assuming this is 1 quarterback. If it's 2 quarterback league, I have no issue with that. I think that's a really good start. And actually, it's a lot better than I would even imagine, because you usually can't get both those guys in a 2 quarterback. Let's see what else. Nick Carnivale says, who should I start in my flex, Montgomery or Trey McBride? Note, I have St. Brown and Goff. My other tight end is Andrews. I think that game, I don't think we need to get it highly analytical here. I think that game with Buffalo and the Cardinals is going to be a shootout. It's
Yeah.
projected to be one of the highest scoring games on the week. I think you're fine starting McBride and Andrews. And for what it's worth, you have St. Brown and Goff. I don't love starting three players in an offense, especially running back, quarterback, and wide receiver at the same time. There's going to be some weeks where he probably can do that comfortably, but I'm not passing up on the opportunity to start McBride in what looks to be a possible shootout.
Yeah, I'm with you on McBride as well. You
Okay.
got two very high volume tight ends, and I think they realistically should probably be your starting lineup every week. The only pivot I have there is, knock on wood, something happened to Gibbs, and then Montgomery is the clear cut running back one. Then you have some roster management, but until that happens, and hopefully it doesn't, I think you could comfortably go McBride and Mark Andrews, or two of the top 5 tight ends going off the board.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have another super chat in here from David. We appreciate that, David. $2 super. He said 10 team PPR, 2 flex, Chuba and Mike Williams for Brooks and JMO. So he's giving up. I'm assuming this is a trade. So he's giving up Mike Williams and Chuba Hubbard for Brooks and Jameson Williams. If that's the trade, it really depends on your running back depth, because they did just announce that Brooks is slow and might have a delay in his timeline to come back when it comes to his rehab. And I'm not the biggest Jameson Williams fan, to be completely honest. Said running backs are Saquon, Kamara, Najee, Spears, Chase Brown, Chuba. Okay, so I mean, Chuba is his 6th running back. If you put Chase Brown ahead of him, I think I'd have Chuba ahead of Chase now. But regardless, it's running back 4, 5, or 6. And his receivers are AJ Brown, Evans, Rice, Mike Williams, and Palmer. Yeah, I think you need a little bit more. You might want a little more pop there. So I think I prefer the JMO and Brooks side, because you can wait on Brooks to come back, and there is a lot of value if he is good. Is there a risk that he's not good? Absolutely. And will Chuba probably have standalone value the rest of the year? Absolutely. But you don't need him to come back quickly, and I think he has much more pop and upside than Mike Williams at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Chuba Hubbard. I'm drafting him a lot because even when Brooks comes back, I do think Chuba Hubbard maintains a role. Anytime when a rookie, misses this much time in the preseason and he's going to miss regular season time, it's going to take him time to get ramped up. And who knows, maybe. And I thought Brooks was going to be the guy if it wasn't for the injury. But being able to move Chuba Hubbard and Mike Williams, who I like a lot, Mike Williams, but you are, with the way your roster build is, you can afford to take a home run swing. And moving both of these guys to get Jameson Williams, where if he hits, I think he completely strengthens your wide receiver group. And Brooks, you might not need him with those running backs. Let's say they do bring him back, fully week 8. He gets going week 10 or 12. You have a player ready to be unleashed. Hey, we need to see what this guy has for the future. They might unleash him for the fantasy playoff. So I think this is a move for the future. And I think this is a move that you can make because you did draft well and you have a lot of depth at both positions.
Yeah, I agree. Luis Roma came in and gave us a little more context again, so we appreciate that. He said wide receivers are AJ Brown, Ayuk, Ridley, Brian Thomas, Curtis Samuel, Josh Downs, and then he says Walker, Zamir, so he's got Gibbs, Walker, Zamir, and Spears. Yeah, I wouldn't do it either, and that's why we appreciate the added context. Sometimes it's not always a black and white thing, but you have enough wide receiver depth that I'd rather take the upside in Polk. And Josh Palmer's a high floor, but he doesn't have that kind of upside. And you can wait on Polk to be a guy for you later on in the season. A couple more questions. Well, a lot more questions. Just wanted to also shout out to you, David, as well. David, we appreciate that. If you want to get your Twitter handle, we're also probably going to start doing some shout outs to the people that send in super chats. We'll shout you out on our Twitter handle as well on the Face Off account, just showing you guys that we appreciate it. But yeah, thanks for popping in, David, and we appreciate the super. Let's see what else we have here. I mean, we are backed up with some more questions. Let me go to the next player, and then we'll pull some more questions. Let's bang out these last two, and then we'll spend some time trying to get to as many questions as we can. So next player is going to be Jalen Tolbert. 6% rostered across fantasy formats. Kind of surprised that he is not rostered a little higher. I actually snagged Jalen Tolbert in a couple of leagues, especially I'm in a 14-man league, and I needed some upside. And I think Tolbert, even though CeeDee Lamb is back and he's healthy and he's paid, and I don't think he's going to start off slow, I think Tolbert still provides value and is a guy like we talked about before with J.K. Dobbins. Like, the reason I like guys like Tolbert, I draft veterans later and rookie running backs later. That's usually my combination. I like rookie running backs later, and I like veteran wide receivers at the end of my drafts. The reason being is the veteran wide receivers, they're going to tell you exactly what their role is early and often, and you're comfortable enough to drop them where they probably won't get added if you're dropping them because they didn't have a good few weeks. With Tolbert, we'll see exactly how much Dallas likes him in the first 2 weeks, right? Brandon Cooks was hurt. CeeDee Lamb was out, right? And Tolbert was like the main guy at camp for a while because those two guys weren't playing. Now, Brandon Cooks is back, I believe, practicing. So is CeeDee Lamb. But this is a guy in Tolbert who looked really good in camp, right? So he's worth a dart throw. I personally could see him, even if Cooks is healthy, I could see him outproducing Cooks on a full 17 game season because he's young and he's healthy. And Cooks played mostly, if not almost all the games last year. And it wasn't like he crushed it for fantasy either. He had like one fantasy relevant game, and that's really it. So this is a team that running backs stink, and they may be having to throw the football more. And if CeeDee Lamb is, double covered, maybe that opens up more opportunities for Tolbert to work in the field.
Yeah, I like Jalen Tolbert a lot. And, he has spent majority of the offseason, I'd say, working with Dak Prescott. We know CeeDee Lamb was not there. We do know a few weeks back, Brandon Cooks missed time with I believe, some kind of an injury, or for whatever reason, he had to step away from the field. But that opened up a lot of opportunity for Jalen Tolbert to work with the starters. Just a few hours ago, Cowboys beat writer Calvin Watkins said it's official that Jalen Tolbert will be the number 3 wide receiver on this team. There is a need, for a pass catcher to step up, not named CeeDee Lamb. And I think Jalen Tolbert could be it. Now, the first memory I have of Jalen Tolbert, he lined up wrong and took a 5-yard penalty in his rookie year. He made some plays last year, and now entering his 3rd season. I think the Cowboys told us, hey, we might trust this guy enough to let Michael Gallup walk and now start him. And this is going to be a big year for guys like Rico Dowdle. There's a lot of opportunity for young players to step up on this roster. And Jalen Tolbert, from the wide receiver standpoint, he's the guy to invest into.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's bang out this last player, and then we will go ahead and try to answer some of your questions before we head out. It is getting late. Greg Dulcich, 2% roster across formats. This is a guy that, me as a Broncos fan, I like to think I'm plugged in, and I think Greg Dulcich is a really good play. This is a team that lacks pop. This is a team that lacks, like, playmakers at the wide receiver position. Courtland Sutton is going to do his thing. Marvin Mims, we're really not sure what kind of role he's going to have. But Greg Dulcich is an athlete. Like, every time he's on the field and the ball is in his hands, like, he is a very, very good athlete with the ball in his hands. And Sean Payton, raved over Greg Dulcich last year when he came in. He talked about him in this Joker role where, if you remember, like, Jeremy Shockey, and if you remember Jimmy Graham, like, the way he was able to use those tight ends, very similar from an athleticism standpoint. Like, Jimmy Graham wasn't the best blocking tight end, right? But like, they got him on the field. I think they'll do the same with Dulcich. I think I am a little worried that Peyton does love the other guy. I can't remember. Troutman, yeah. And so Troutman's going to get on the field, but Dulcich will get on the field because this is a team, again, that lacks pop, and Dulcich had a really good camp. It's really about the health with him. If he's healthy, he should be a top 20 tight end, in my opinion, if he's healthy this year. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. And I think for all intents and purposes, like this team really likes what they have in him. It's just a matter of being on the field and healthy. And I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, that he ends up being healthy this year.
Yeah, this is a play on when it comes to like Dulcich's health. This is what we're going to buy into by signing him or picking him up on your fantasy rosters. Adam Troutman. There's a world where he might outsnap Greg Dulcich because he's a superior blocker. But last year in 17 games, Troutman 204 yards and 3 touchdowns. Very underwhelming for a full-time player. Where Dulcich in 12 career games 36 for 436 and 2 touchdowns. So a little bit more dynamic of a receiver. And Pete said they need some explosiveness. They need some pop and versatility in this offense. This is another situation like when I was talking about Jaleel McLaughlin. You got the young quarterbacks. They like to lean on the running back check down and intermediate routes going to the tight end. So there could be targets going Greg Dulcich's way. It's just a matter of can he finally stay healthy and shake those injuries?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, this is a guy that like if you're dropping if you're rostering Greg Dulcich, like he's going to be involved. Again, we talk about these veterans and these players, like he's not an older player, but like he's not a rookie, and we will know quickly how often he will be involved in this offense, in my opinion. And I think we'll know after the first few weeks if he's droppable or not. And I think he's definitely a good play, especially in deeper leagues. Let's try to get rapid fire. That is all our players that we wanted to get to in terms of the main part of the show. I'm going to flash this graphic on the screen just to go over. These are our waiver priorities. These are the guys that we went over today. We have them ranked for you, and we'll post this on our Facebook and Twitter. But essentially, we rank them as Ray Davis is priority 1, Jaleel McLaughlin 2, J.K. Dobbins 3, Mike Williams 4, Tolbert 5, and Greg Dulcich 6. So that's what we feel like is the most important. But again, it's going to matter on your roster. If you need a wide receiver or you need a tight end, you might want to go after one of those guys instead. So we got a lot of questions. We got a lot of questions here. Let's try to get through them as quickly as we can. Let's see. Who do we want to go to first? Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Just trying to make sure. Here we go. So incognito _TK says full PPR, Tyreek Hill and David Montgomery or AJ Brown and James Cook. I lean Tyreek Hill and David Montgomery. I love AJ Brown, but I'm not as high on James Cook, and I just think Hill, is a little bit of a tier up for over AJ Brown than me. And I actually have Montgomery and James Cook ranked pretty close.
Yeah, I agree. Tyreek Hill is the best player in this trade.
Absolutely. SJMP says, if I was to package up Rachaad White and Davante Adams in a trade package for someone who should I aim for? I've been seeing that Adams is on the decline, so I'm not sure if I should trade him, but before it's too late. I guess it depends if we're talking dynasty or if we're talking redraft. I think we both agree, like we're not high on Davante Adams, but I do think,
he still has name value.
Yeah, right. He still has name value.
We've done some Davante bus videos. He was one of my bus calls for the year, and people think I'm nuts. He's Davante Adams. What do you mean?
Yeah.
He has Gardner Minshew. Look what he did for Pittman. So, like, there's people in your league who still value Davante Adams as that guy who's a top 5 receiver, 5-6 years in a row with Aaron Rodgers. And then he, had that one good year with Carr. It was downhill last year. And it was not only statistically, but there's some predictive metrics that suggest he's going in the wrong direction. So, I think find somebody who still values Davante as Davante.
And I don't think he's going to lose value quickly. Like he's going to get targets. So like a lot of people, the big thing they want to see is the targets. And so I don't think he'll lose value. It's just like, you should be sharp enough to say, hey, like the targets are great and all, but like the ceiling is not there. Guys that I would target, I would look at like even like a DJ Moore. And then if you give up White and Adams, you get DJ Moore and maybe a running back upgrade over White, like maybe even like a Kenneth Walker, in my opinion. I would be happy with a trade like that. But we appreciate you coming in. Verdad says pick up Luke McCaffrey or Dontavian Wicks. For me, it's Dontavian Wicks. I just think the ceiling is higher. And I mean, he was with the first team offense in preseason, and Jordan Love threw him a 65-yard touchdown. Like, I think the ceiling is higher if one of those wide receivers go down.
Yep.
I don't know with Luke McCaffrey. It might take him a long time for him to pay off for you this season. I don't know if you're in agreement with that.
Yeah, no, the deal breaker Packers are an elite offense, better
Yeah.
quarterback, and we want to invest in those type of offenses in fantasy.
Yep, absolutely. Trenton Gaw said, got Patty as my starting quarterback, dropped Brock Purdy for Caleb Williams on my bench. Was it a smart move? I prefer the Purdy over Caleb. I think you have Patrick Mahomes, who is an elite quarterback. I think Purdy will provide, I mean, he's got the best playoff schedule for fantasy quarterback. So I've already stated my claim on him. I have a cat moving across the screen again. Sorry about that. But yeah, so I mean, Williams, like, I feel like you're chasing the possibility, but I don't think he's better than a top 10 quarterback in fantasy this year. And I'd rather hitch my wagon on Purdy, who's going to be an elite offense, in my opinion.
Here's, you got Mahomes. You're probably not going to ever bench Mahomes for either one of these guys.
Yeah.
But with Caleb Williams, if he pops early, he's one of those polarizing players, right? Because we know quarterbacks are devalued in one quarterback leagues. He's one of those rookies. He's one of those polarizing names where you might be able to trade him for something, right? Like something of note, and then go maybe pick Purdy or another backup quarterback up. Like Caleb's one of those, if he gets off to an early good start, there are people in your league who might want to give up something for him. And that's not something you see normally in one quarterback leagues, but he's just that type of polarizing player where you might be able to play the game right there.
And they could get off to a slow start. So, like, I mean, to be honest, like, I might be wanting to trade Caleb if I'm planning on dropping him. Like, I would try to trade him now because they have a tough matchup in Tennessee, who that defense looks like they're going to be much improved. Another question here from Bronson Hyo. He says, trade Debo for Olave, 1-for-1 in PPR. Yeah, I would take Olave in PPR. If it was a half point or a standard, I would go Debo. But because it's PPR, I'd go Olave.
Yeah, I slightly lean Olave here too. There's going to be more volume going in his direction. There's not a lot of playmakers in New Orleans that are going to be commanding targets.
Yeah, absolutely. Also from Bronson, he said, trade Keon Coleman and Jalen Waddle for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, yep. I would do that as well. Ronaldo Torres, Facebook mod in our group, says 12-team PPR, start in my flex spot for week 1. George Pickens or Malik Neighbors. I'm going Neighbors. Pickens has a really tough matchup in AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates, and Justin Simmons. There's not a lot of other wide receivers that defense is going to have to target, I guess, if that makes sense. And Neighbors, for what it's worth, is going to be hyper targeted, and that Viking secondary is not very good. And so I definitely would go Neighbors in this spot this week.
I love George Pickens, but in this situation, I think the higher floor belongs to Malik Neighbors. But Pickens the type of talent that can always go off at any time. Yeah. With the way he can run after the catch. But if you want to play it safe, high floor PPR, I do like Malik Neighbors. Now, they did do a good job upgrading their secondary in Minnesota. I like Brian Flores. They signed a late addition, Stephon Gilmore, who was outstanding in his years with Dallas. So we're probably going to see Stephon Gilmore all over Malik Neighbors, but still Neighbors should see enough volume to give you a higher floor than Pickens.
Yeah, I agree. Rivers says Xavier Worthy or Jay Williams as my flex. Javonte. I lean Javonte. I said it before. I think Xavier Worthy's going to have one shot at a big play this week, and maybe he converts it. Could be like a 45, 50-yard touchdown. I think the Chiefs are going to want to showcase that and put the league on notice in prime time week 1, first game of the year. But I also know Andy Reid has a tendency to really work these rookie wide receivers in slow, and Rashee Rice we didn't see pop until the second half of the year, and Javonte Williams is going to get a lot of volume, I think, in this first game. So I would go Williams.
I would go Williams too. But man, something Like I think he's so boom or bust. Like we're either going to get like 90 and a touchdown, or we're going to
Yep.
get 2 catches for 30 yards. I could be dead wrong there, but Javonte is the much safer play here. And again, he should get the volume.
Yeah, and I mean Marquise Brown is ruled out, so that does play a factor, and I can totally understand going the other way. I just feel like Andy Reid, I don't want to get sucked in. Like if Worthy could pay off where he has like 2 catches for like 70 yards and a touchdown because he gets one big play and you might kick yourself. But I think we know what we're getting with Javonte this week. Upper 90 says, would you pick up Dalton Schultz or Jonathan Jonnu Smith? I would go Schultz as well. Let's see. Jamie says Browns are favored, so bet the Cowboys to win. Let's see what else. Vinny Oriolo on Facebook says, who am I flexing? Javonte Williams or Mostert this week? I think I go Mostert. Let me see. Hang on.
Miami gets Jacksonville. I just love the total in that game. I think you got to go Mostert for the total.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel as well. I'd go Mostert as well. All right, we're ripping through these questions, so we appreciate you guys. Hustlin' Bruce says, would you trade Kenneth Walker for Rashee Rice and J.K. Dobbins 1-point PPR Dynasty? Okay, so this is Dynasty. It depends if you like Walker over Rice. I would probably lean the Rashee Rice side just because, shelf life for running backs, it just – Rice is still really young. In a vacuum, I would lean the Rice side because you're also getting Dobbins, who could help you win this year as well if he's solid. So that's where I would go.
And with the Rice side, we're also getting Patrick Mahomes.
That is also true. Joe Carlton said I'm a Zay Flowers hater. Yes, I know. I'm not really high on Flowers this year. I'm scrolling down because I know we have some more questions. But you guys really did a good job, at least, tuning in and helping us out. We really do appreciate it. What Happening says, full PPR. What do you think I could trade for if I offer Rashee Rice and James Cook? Looking to upgrade running back. I already have CMC. Yeah, I would look for me personally, like I'm looking at Pacheco maybe, or Kenneth Walker in that range.
I would want better than Kenneth Walker, especially when he's including James Cook.
Yeah, that is true.
In that Pacheco, and if this is non-dynasty, I think the big one is probably Derrick Henry.
Yeah, Derrick Henry for sure. I would also probably want more though if I don't get Henry, even if I got Pacheco. If I'm giving Rashee Rice and James Cook has enough name value that I think people that like aren't as sharp, who are up on things like we kind of are still valuing James Cook pretty high. So I think you might even be able to get something kicked back to you. And I always say, if you're going to do a 2-for-1, ask for some FAB. Even if it's $10-15, guys, like if you don't feel like there's a guy on their team that'll accept it, if you threw them in or anybody that you love as a throw-in, just add some FAB. It'll help you down the line. I think it's something to keep in mind. And we are pretty much, looks like we're good-ish. David came back in and said Josh Palmer or Dontavian Wicks. I go Palmer as well. Pancho Zapata said flex Waddle, Higgins, Neighbors, or JSN this week. Man.
I honestly, with the situation with Jamar Chase, I go Higgins slightly over Waddle, but it's one of those two.
I'm going Waddle just because Christian Gonzalez, if it is Jamar Chase is not there, Higgins will have to deal with Christian Gonzalez, who I think is one of the better younger corners in the league. So I think Waddle in a shootout, which, we talk about this. If I'm in between two guys and you say the same thing, like I go with the higher point total. And I think that game's going to be really high scoring in Miami. Let's see what else. I'd need a better running back. I got Mixon and Chase plus Brooks on IR. Pancho said, I think that was in regards to the James Cook question. So I think we kind of already talked about that, but he said he needs a better running back.
Henry would be my target. Pacheco, Henry, if you can pull off ETN, but I think Henry or Pacheco are probably the most likely trade candidates or trade back candidates.
Yeah, no, I agree. Zach Linton said Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, or Zamir White need 2 for PPR. I think I lean Zamir White, and I think I lean Najee Harris. I think I lean Ramondre Stevenson and Zamir White only because Jacoby's banged up. They might lean on the run, and that Bengals defense isn't great in terms of like against the run in general. I like starting them for a defense this week, but I also think Ramondre should be able to get his. And I don't know, Najee. Like I think that Falcons defense is going to be good, so I lean Zamir. I think that the Chargers defense is banged up, and I'm not in love with them. So I would actually go Zamir and Ramondre here.
I'm sitting Ramondre Stevenson.
Okay.
'Cause I think he does get volume, but I'm living in a world where I think Najee could potentially get 275, 300 plus carries this year. He's going to get volume. We know what Arthur Smith. I think he's a prototypical Arthur Smith back, and obviously Zamir White's going to see volume too. And this, the Raiders Chargers game, the point total it might be 10 points between the two of them. Like we're going to see between with these two coaching staffs. Zamir White could see 20 touches easily.
I agree. Okay, do we have anything else here? What name is the YouTube channel? Poncho says. Poncho, he is in on Facebook here. Let me go ahead and just send you our link for YouTube. I could even easily just send over the link to this show if you give me 1 second.
I dropped the link in there already. If it lets me, yeah.
Yeah, so that's dropped in there.
Oh no,
Jimmy,
I fucked it up.
you fucked it up.
I put .com there twice, but yeah.
All right, hold on. Let me see what we can do here. I have the link to our current show, so I can just share it right now. So use that, Poncho. I just sent it in. Either one, the last two should work. There was Joe Carlton said start one JSN or Sutton. I am starting JSN this week.
Same here.
He is one of my favorite plays.
Yep.
I think DK Metcalf's gonna have Surtain all over him this week.
And when we're Jimmy, I love both of these guys, but I'm not dropping Ladd. There's too much. No. We know he's going to have volume. Ray Davis is he's a very high speculative addition for me, but Ladd, he's going to be the guy, him or Palmer.
Yeah. And David, it looks like Hoff is helping us out here, guys. Yeah. If you see the comments and back, David said trade Warren for Mostert and PPR. Hoff says he wouldn't trade Warren for Mostert. What about you, Anthony?
I would do that move.
I would do that too. I think high-powered offense. I think they're both in a split, and if both guys are healthy the whole year, Mostert should finish higher. Yeah. So that would be where I really. I'm kind of surprised because Hoff is a Raheem Mostert fan. But look, that's going to really do it for us, guys. I mean, we had a lot of activity in the chat, and we really do appreciate it. If you happen to not be able to get your question answered because I missed it, come back into the show once this drops off and just send it in. Anthony, myself, Steve, and Hoff, we're in there answering all of your questions. And if you have any questions on the podcast side and you're listening, pop into our YouTube and just send a question onto the show in the comments, and we'll answer it for you. But we really do appreciate it. And Anthony, why don't you close us out?
Yeah, we're going to wrap up here. We're going to be back Thursday and Friday answering week 1 start, sit, and matchup questions. Tomorrow, we're going to be dropping some start, sit videos. So subscribe and put your notifications on so you can be notified anytime you're live or drop new video content. But for Pete, myself, this is the Face Off Sports Network. We'll see you next time.